Good morning, everybody. It's 9 o'clock, so I think we'll get started since we got a long day ahead of us. So this is the time and the place of the State Public Works Board meeting for Wednesday, August 22nd, 2018 at 9 a.m. Roll call.
Ward Patrick for the record. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairperson Bryce Klutz. Vice Chairperson Sean Stewart.
Present.
Member Clint Bentley. Present. Member Adam Hand.
Present.
Member Tito Taberti. Member Kevin Lewis is in transit. We'll mark him present when he arrives. Member and Director of the Department of Administration Patrick Cates.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. Agenda item number 2, public comment. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 3. Agenda item number 3 for possible action, acceptance and approval of Public Works Board meeting minutes for May 1st, 2018. Are there any comments to the meeting minutes? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion for acceptance.
Motion to approve.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. The meeting minutes are approved. Agenda item number 4, overview of State Public Works Division prioritization criteria. The administrator will give a brief overview of the State Public Works Division CIP prioritization criteria for the board's consideration. Mr. Patrick.
Thank you, Chairman. Ward Patrick for the record. This is the criteria that the board has been using and has approved, and we've incorporated that even at a higher level in our evaluations that you'll be hearing on September 6th when we do the administrator's recommendation. Largely, the overall umbrella of the prioritization is to take care of what we've got. So you'll see the higher priority projects will be maintenance type projects. Legal requirements is higher on the list with ADA, court orders and legal requirements, life safety, code violations, and seismic upgrades being of the highest priority. Project continuations for maintenance projects are next, then followed by the standard list of deferred maintenance items, and these are broken into 2 categories, essential facilities and other facilities for the most part. And so the essential facilities are broken down as institutional, which includes corrections and mental health, these 24-hour type facilities. Areas of governance, including the Capitol building, Sawyer building, other areas of Attorney General's office. Public safety, including Highway Patrol, and then the National Guard, Nevada Division of Forestry. Parts of Nevada Division of Forestry are considered essential, the fire and dispatch. You'll see later where we're looking at NDF as an area where the tree nursery is considered a non-essential facility. In Department of Agriculture, we'll have food distribution as a critical and essential facility, as well as Department of Motor Vehicles. Statewide programs are also listed under deferred maintenance, roofing, ADA, fire and life safety, paving, and indoor quality. And finally, the other facilities and historic preservation. That concludes information on the maintenance projects. If you turn the page, you'll see the construction projects. And so these are basically sister documents. So you'll see essential government facilities listed basically in parallel with the maintenance facilities, and then other facilities. This is not an exact science, so there's other considerations for priority. Those mandated by law for these new construction projects, life safety, furniture, fixtures, and equipment from previously funded construction projects, commitments from the legislature like prior session continuation projects, decisions whether we should own or lease will affect construction prioritization, percentage of non-state funding. If a project had 100% other funding, is in the construction area is likely to be funded, 75% likely to be funded, and then as it goes down 50% and below, it'd be less likely to be funded based on the amount of other funding. Required level of control. Again, this is custody level, so for instance, Lakes Crossing, those awaiting adjudication and to be judged if they're capable of being adjudicated in the mental health system. Level of service to public, for instance, public safety, Department of Motor Vehicles. And then finally, facility condition needs index. So if there's a facility, existing facility that has repair costs up and above half of the gross valuation of the building, that might also play a role in the prioritization for a project to be in the construction recommendations. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes. We thought that it would be important to have a little overview of what the prioritization would be coming forward. You can, pull that out of your book. Keep eye on that. This session, during the due diligence of the project managers, we've been going through a review process to classify all these projects in those categories. And so you'll see on September 6th how that will play into the administrator's recommendation. That's all I had for that part.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. Any questions about that? Okay, moving on to agenda item number 5, agency presentation of 2019 Capital Improvement Program request to the board. First up will be Peace Officers Standards and Training.
Well, good morning. My name is Mike Sherlock, for the record. I am the Executive Director of the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training. With me today is Deputy Director Tim Bunting. We're here once again to outline our need for an emergency vehicle operations course within our jurisdiction of Post. We've made it pretty short. We've been here many times before, and we wanted to hopefully get right to the point, and so we'll do that. You should have a copy of our PowerPoints there in front of you. Tim? Oops. Maybe. There you go. So real quick, and you can read the PowerPoints, just a quick background of some of the takeaways from this first slide. A couple things that this project was approved back in 2007. Much of the funds were actually deposited, and due to the economic turn down, those funds were swept and the project didn't proceed. Just to give you a little bit of a history there as far as that goes, in the 10 years since it was approved, 364 peace officers have died in auto-related crashes since that time. 6 in the state of Nevada have died since that money was swept and the project was put on hold. Clearly, the need for this training facility was acknowledged back then. Obviously, the project was approved, and frankly, that need has not changed at all. If anything, it's increased dramatically. A couple things also that you can see there, the delay of the project truly has not only increased the production cost, obviously, for a variety of reasons, but also liability for our agencies. And let's be honest, what a police officer does, what a peace officer does in the state of Nevada is drive. That's what they do all day long. And clearly, the ability for us, with our mission being training new peace officers, driving an emergency vehicle operation is critical to their training. Tim?
As it says, we've already have the land. It's adjacent to the Stewart facility where we're at. It's between Bigelow and the prison access road. There's 26 acres in there. And it's basically, this project is 2 phases. The first phase is what we're talking about today, and it's in the southern part of the land that we have. The $7.8 million is gonna give us about 7 acres of asphalt that we can set up a cone course on, and we can run drivers through that cone course for skills. It also gives us security of the area, gives us 2 classrooms. 2 classrooms critical, and one is for instruction. The other classroom will be used to house driving simulators. A couple of years ago, we did a study and found that to train drivers, you have to do 2 things, decision-making and skills. So the driving simulators do the decision-making, and the driving the vehicle itself is the skill part of it. Also, with the simulators, we can bring in supervisors who then can act as a supervisor in a pursuit. So what that person would be doing, we also can bring in dispatch. So we can bring in everybody that would be in the real pursuit into training. The phase 2 is a long ways away, and we're not gonna really worry about that right now.
Mike Sherlock for the record again. So again, when we look at the why, and you can see that there is plans for some of the bigger agencies in Nevada for emergency vehicle training. The problem we have is our mission at Post is to train and provide adequate training for all peace officers around the state of Nevada. And what we're seeing is there's a real need for the rurals who have nowhere to go for this training. Right now, we are using a parking lot here in Carson City to conduct that training. It's less than adequate, and it's looking like we are going to lose the ability to use that parking lot very soon. So it's getting critical for us in terms of having adequate facilities for that type of training. One other area, in terms of what the western states do, as we look at basic training across the country, Nevada is way behind. All the western states currently have emergency vehicle operation courses, and frankly, they have for 20, 30, and 40 years. And Nevada has none from a Post standpoint. So from that perspective, I think it's important to bring Nevada up to what the industry standard is, particularly in the western states. And at the very least, we owe that to the residents of Nevada to provide adequate training for the peace officers that patrol the streets of Nevada, which is why we're asking for this at this point. We've left a lot of time for questions, again, because we've been here so many times, and I think the need is clear, but we can answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, gentlemen. Questions of the board? I have a quick question, Mr. Patrick. Was this originally designed in 2005? And if so, is there any aspect of that design that can still be utilized?
Ward Patrick for the record. So much of the design is a civil in nature, and so will not be affected by current code updates. So a lot of the civil design would be still appropriate. And I would also offer that back in 2007, there was a $900 million CIP approved at that time. Approximately $200 million got swept. This project was a part of that. This project was requested a number of years even before it was approved in 2007. You know, I believe it was requested 2 or 3 or 4 times even before that. So this project has been on the list of items for the state to consider since before the year 2000.
Any other questions?
I have a question.
Director Cates?
I wonder if you can help me understand exactly where this course is going to be located. It doesn't sound like it's on the Stewart Indian campus proper. Maybe you could just describe that, because I know they recently adopted a master plan for the Stewart Indian School, and if it is adjacent or part of that property, if this is consistent with that master plan.
It is directly east of the Stewart facility. Bigelow goes back to the new housing development that's back there. Thanks, Ken. And it's between Bigelow and the access road to Northern Nevada Correctional Center.
Right.
It's called Prison Access Road, is all I know.
Okay.
The road is named.
I was trying to look at it on Google Maps. I know you have a map, but it's a little hard to picture exactly where that's at, so I think I understand.
South of Snyder Road.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, gentlemen. We appreciate your time and your patience.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Continuing on with agenda item number 5, next department up, Tourism and Cultural Affairs.
Good morning, Chair Klutz and fellow board members. For the record, David Peterson, Interim Director of the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our CIP request to you today. This request addresses the challenges the department faces related to current and future museum collections, as well as the safety and security of our staff and facilities. In addition, we have 2 great opportunities for your consideration at the Nevada State Railroad Museum in Boulder City and at the Stewart facility in Carson City. At this time, I'm going to turn things over to Sherry Rupert, the Executive Director of the Nevada Indian Commission. Thank you.
Good morning. Trying to figure out the right button here. As David said, I am Sherry Rupert of the Nevada Indian Commission, and look forward to sharing with you about the commission and our projects that we've applied for. The Nevada Indian Commission has been around since 1965. We are a state agency with the mission to ensure the well-being of the American Indian and Alaska Native citizens statewide through development enhancement of the government-to-government relationship between the state of Nevada and Indian tribes, and through education for a greater cultural understanding of the state's first citizens. Next slide. So to kind of show you the magnitude of the Stewart facility, we have a photo of the map here of the facility. And the Stewart Indian School Living Legacy is kind of our overarching initiative at the Stewart Indian School. The school was established in 1890 and closed in 1980 and is 110 acres, over 65 buildings out at the school. As Mr. Cates mentioned, we did complete a master plan this year for the facility, and that provides a roadmap for restoration and creates a cultural heritage destination for future generations that ensures that this important part of Native American history and Nevada's shared experience is preserved. And we have our illustrious Mr. Barton, who's going to talk to you about the projects for the divisions of museums and history.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, Peter Barton. I'm the administrator of the Division of Museums and History. And this is my 8th time here to present the critical maintenance needs and new construction needs for the Division of Museums and History. And it will be my last. After 40 years in the business, I'm looking to turn the reins over to others. And over the course of 40 years, you know, you go through life, you learn some lessons. And one of the lessons I've learned that I just take a moment to relate comes from your former administrator, Gus Nunez. And one year, as I was wrestling with the CIPs for museums and history, I said to Gus, "What's the secret to success?" And he said, "Peter, those who bring money to the table have a much better chance of succeeding." And I took that to heart, and I began to watch these proceedings a little more carefully. And sure enough, you know, in she comes to the table with a pile of money, and projects get funded, and National Guard does the same. So I wanted to begin today by putting some money on the table. And Guy's going to handle that for me. We're starting with, as I say, we're putting money on the table. It's a lesson I learned from Gus. And actually, if you look at the label on that, look at the company that manufactured that candy. Yeah, my family's in the candy business back east. Well, anyhow, to get more serious, museums and history, our vision, I just wanted to point out the vision, which is we are trusted stewards and engaging storytellers. We collect and we interpret Nevada's history, and we do that through a partnership and consensus building that always puts the public's needs first. We have across the state 7 museums that have in total 39 buildings and structures, and the latest facility, facility condition needs index estimate put the replacement value of those facilities at $108 million, and that does not account for the collections we hold, which are many times more than $100 million in value. The estimated repair cost or maintenance needs in the next 10 years exceeds $10 million, and there's $2.8 million in critical maintenance needs right now. So to kick it off, our first project, or our first top priority, is a small or a modest construction project at the Indian Hills Curatorial Center here in Carson City. And that is it's a 10-acre site that the state controls down on Topsy Lane. In 1980, we built a 15,000 square foot facility that houses history collections for the Northern Nevada State Museums, as well as significant anthropological and archaeological collections that are required, that we collect and maintain by law, and that we do curate for other partners such as Bureau of Land Management. If someone wants to develop a project on public lands in Nevada, they have to go through a Section 106 compliance process, which typically includes some archaeology. The materials that are recovered from those excavations we house. And you can see just in that photograph, you know, the Ruby Pipeline, the Carson Bypass, we hold collections for NDOT, for Carlin Gold Mines and Alturas Transmission Line. We have thousands of cubic feet of material. We are out of space. We are critically short of space. And there's another project that's high on our priorities that we'll talk about in a few minutes that looks to expand in a much more comprehensive way the Curatorial Center. But this would address a critical need right now. We're at 100% capacity. This would construct 2,600 square feet on the existing building at Indian Hills. We have already brought to this project $50,000 in private money to do the design work. We have a complete set of construction documents, biddable documents for the project. We have $100,000 in private money available, so I'm bringing some money to the table, some real money. And it's estimated at about $828,000. This project, if funded, would complete the plan checking and go forward with construction. So I'll pause if there's questions on particular projects, or do you want to take them all at the end? I don't know. What's your pleasure?
I think we'll take them all at the end.
Okay. All right, so our second project for consideration we brought to you 2 years ago. It's out at the Lost City Museum in rural Overton, Nevada. We've got a building there that the original portion of the building from 1935 has failed plumbing, and notably the sanitary sewer line out of the building has collapsed and has restricted flows. From time to time, we get some pretty horrible odors in the building. We've capped off what we can, but we've determined that there's disintegrating pipes in the walls in the facility. Creates a life safety issue. We've got to move staff. Fortunately, it has not impacted the public areas of the museum yet, but this would overhaul and upgrade the sanitary sewer system. We consider it a pretty high priority in the grand scheme of things. I almost brought, we have a video that the one plumber took of the collapsed line, but I thought it's a little too early in the morning to be showing that. So we'll move on. Sherry?
Sure. The next project is the old gym rehabilitation and seismic stabilization at the Stewart Indian School. As we mentioned earlier, we have completed the master plan of the Stewart Indian School, and the old gym is, of course, identified in that master plan as an integral part of telling the story of the Stewart Indian School. The old gym was also identified in the, I believe it was 2009 landscape preservation plan as an important building out at the school, especially as the alumni are interviewed and remember that school and all of the events that took place in that particular gym. In the last legislative session, you all approved, and so did the legislature and the governor, $1.2 million for the seismic, a new roof and seismic stabilization of the roof for the gym. So we're in that process now of construction on that. And so this particular project will complete the seismic stabilization and rehabilitation of the old gym. We're looking at this as an event center for the school. When we did the master plan, the whole idea and focus behind that plan was to create something that was sustainable for the Stewart Indian School. It is an asset for the community, and an asset of this size is very limited in our community. So we're hoping that should this particular project move forward, that the community will be able to utilize that building, and we would be able to bring in additional revenues for future rehabilitation of the Stewart Indian School.
All right, we'll move on to the Nevada State Railroad Museum in Boulder City. This is a final design and new construction project at $13.7 million. The Nevada State Railroad Museum in Boulder City got its start in 1985 when the Union Pacific Railroad abandoned the line through Henderson on to Boulder City, Nevada, turned that property over to the state of Nevada. We, in turn, came up with an agreement with Henderson to put the Henderson tracks in under Henderson's control, and we maintain the tracks from Railroad Pass to Boulder City. We opened a modest tourist railroad, really, out there in 2001, and in that first year we had about 1,600 riders on maybe 10 weekends. By 2015, on 2 days a week for 10 months of the year, we had over 43,000 train riders. This year we're on target to have 55,000 train riders. It's a big operation. We have exceeded the capacity of the very small facilities that exist there in Boulder City. And again, using private money, using about $400,000 in private money, we began a project last year with Lucchese Galati Architects in Las Vegas. We went through a master planning process for the site and looking how to connect this site to Henderson. to create new experiences that go beyond, as the cover of our promotion piece that you have says, more than just a train ride, where we combine various recreational and educational opportunities in a much more comprehensive way. This project has broad support from the folks in the city of Henderson and the city of Boulder City. And Phase 1 would construct a new visitor center, which we sorely need right now. People who wait for the train wait on the platform, whether it's 110 degrees or whether it's 45 degrees and the wind is blowing. And we do get a lot of our customers come during the month of December when it's a little cooler down in Las Vegas. Our Santa trains will haul in between 25 and 30,000 customers in the month of December. So I'd just like to take a moment and direct your attention to the screens and
The Nevada Southern Railway, all aboard!
Railroads are an incredibly important piece of Nevada history. Las Vegas was a town of maybe 250 people when the railroad arrived in 1905.
central to a museum is the role of memory. We use historic objects in museums combined with stories.
The Nevada Southern
An incredibly important piece of Nevada history. Las Vegas was a town of maybe 250 people when the railroad arrived in 1905.
Central to a museum is the role of memory. We use historic objects in museums combined with stories to incubate and stimulate memory in the public. That's central to what we are.
The train being what really brought Boulder City to life when they were building the dam. They needed the train to bring in supplies, to bring in individuals, to bring in some of the ore and that kind of thing. That is really kind of important because what we need now is for the train to bring us in some tourists and to bring us in the guests that will again add to the boom of Boulder City.
Here in Boulder City, we've been able to create a museum with limited resources. And now it's the time for us to go to the next step. And to do that, we have to have a visitor center. We have 40,000 people a year ride the train.
Our goal for the design is to create a facility that matches the attraction of the trains. And we do that through a sequence of design. We start with the Great Arrival, and that community plaza is open to the public. And the highlight of that community plaza is the Davenport, which is the original train car that used to take materials down to Hoover Dam during construction. Visitors are then greeted with a facility that is respectful of the history of Boulder City and of Hoover Dam, but is new and modern to railways. And we do that through use of materials. We use the foundational materials of concrete for the base of the building, but then we move into other transitional materials such as wood and steel.
This museum, the Nevada State Railroad Museum, goes beyond that to being able to create new memories for people. People get to ride this historic train and experience it the way that people did 70, 80, or 90 years ago.
We have 3 staff members and 115 volunteers. So when you come here, you're meeting people for whom this is their passion.
This is a place of pride for the residents of Boulder City, but also it's a place for everyone, a place for people to come to and make connections.
This is a place where you can experience arts, culture, heritage, outdoor recreation in one facility.
Today they come and they experience trains, moving objects, the noise, the whistles, the rumble, the clickety-clack. But now with the visitor center, we can explain to them. We can give them the audio-visual presentations. We can show them all the bits of the history that this railroad represents.
This train ride is an amazing experience just all in itself, but what tourism really does represent for Boulder City is the destination, and the train really acts as kind of the conduit to that. And so by having that community center, that hub, it really is going to become the heart of Boulder City.
Above and beyond a normal museum, this is worth investing in because people walk away with a greater experience, appreciate what they've seen, and will remember it much more strongly.
Come join us on a journey where you can take home more memories than souvenirs.
So just to wrap up on this project then, we've got a piece in front of you called More Than Just a Train Ride, and I direct your attention to page 8 where we say it begins with a bridge, and truly it does. In the construction of the Interstate 11 project, the railroad line was restored via a railroad overpass over the new highway. So for the first time in 30 years, we are now reconnected to Henderson, and that opens the opportunities that this project has wrapped within it to be able to take longer excursions. You can see a very jovial Governor Sandoval there as he's wielding a spike, spiking down the last silver spike on the line. He really didn't do it quite that dramatically, by the way. And then in the centerfold of the document is the master plan, site plan. And what we're talking about in this particular project request is off on the right side, where we have moved the focus of the museum away from Yucca Street, which is on the left side, and focusing down towards the central business district and the historic district of Boulder City. Now that the bypass is open, traffic is calmed through the community. We want to be partners with Boulder City in creating a new economic and recreational series of opportunities. So we're moving we're shifting operations to the far right. And included in this project would be items 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and the access road 8 would be part of this project. And later phases would include a linear park and a connection to the existing trail system. Moving on to the next project, this is at the Nevada State Museum in Las Vegas, where we're seeking funds to replace a failing lighting control system. This facility was opened in 2011. It was built in 2008, and the economic recession caused us to take a little pause before we were able to open. And this is a $213,000 project, again, to replace the lighting controllers that control all the aspects of lighting in the building. The system is obsolete. We're no longer able to get parts for it, and actually, if you take a careful look, you'll see someone holding a 5 1/4 inch floppy disk. That's how this system is programmed. So we have to have our IT folks maintain a very old computer for us to be able to keep this system running. Sherry?
Thank you. So as we are asking you to continue the state's investment in not only the cultural center, the old gym. There's a lot of projects going on out at Stewart. The old gym, we're also asking you to consider the old bakery building. Actually, it was a bakery building, then it was a post office out at Stewart. And we're looking at repurposing that for collection storage for the Stewart Indian School Cultural Center and Museum. Currently, the collections are stored up at the repository up off of Topsy Lane through the Division of Museums and History. And what we'd like to do is bring those collections to the Stewart Indian School where they're going to be exhibited. This will allow staff to have access to the collections when needed. Currently, they have to make an appointment to access the collection up on Topsy. It just makes sense to have the collections on the campus. As far as the cultural center building, you might ask, well, why can't you use that building for collections? There's no room in that particular building. The first floor is going to be all exhibits. The second floor, the floor doesn't, what are the correct words here? The load of the second floor, due to limitations of the structural load capacity, do not allow for the larger items in the collections to be housed on that particular floor. Currently, there's a portion of the collection that is in the Nevada Indian Commission office, but that's just one little office space in there. Our museum director has determined that the collections would require approximately 2,000 square feet of space to be housed. With renovating building number 19, which is the bakery building, that would provide another 1,646 square feet of space for the collections. it says here that the renovations would include hazmat mitigation and complete interior renovation and installation of high-density mobile shelving for the storage of the Stewart Indian School Cultural Center and Museum collections. I did want to mention, because I'm not sure it shows up in the paperwork there, that the NIC was able to utilize some FY18 funding in the amount of $9,950 on improvements to the building. $1,850 was spent on asbestos abatement and $8,100 on concrete work for replacement of the north and south porches.
Moving along to our next project. At the Nevada State Railroad Museum here in Carson City, a technology upgrade facility was built in about 1980, and the infrastructure on site does not allow us to have reasonable technology. We're using dial-up speed connections, which in today's world for museums, we move a lot of data, as do most agencies. We move large files related to collections. We now are using technology in exhibits more and more so, and we're really limited and hampered by not having the ability to really have broadband speed communication. That photo is one of our past facility managers who was trying to access the Granger catalog online, and you can see what happened to him. Priority 8 for the Division of Museums and History goes back to the Indian Hills Curatorial Center for new construction. And again, we brought private money to the table. It's a recurring theme of about $110,000 to do a site master plan and a schematic design for a new facility at Indian Hills to alleviate in a more comprehensive way the collection storage issues that we've got in terms of space. We've got, as I said, the 10-acre site. We've got plenty of room to develop. This would be a new building, not connected directly to the existing structure. It would provide the offices, the workspaces. When collections come into a museum, there's an extensive process that we undertake to ensure that those materials are safe, that they won't bring in something that could harm existing collections. They're studied, and then those materials are placed into storage. So this would build us about 30,000 square feet, including office space, and help us consolidate collections. And I believe Thor Dyson is here from NDOT, and going to ask Thor to just come forward for a moment. We store collections throughout Carson City and other facilities, and we've been kind of squatters at an NDOT facility at Hot Springs Road for a number of years. We've got 7,000 square feet of collections in that space, which are not ideal for the collections. They're not environmentally controlled because it's an NDOT garage and doors are open. Different kind of pests come into the building, and we've had to go back in and treat for bird droppings and other nasty substances. So NDOT is looking for ways and strategies to help us as well. So Thor?
Yes, thank you. Thor Dyson, Nevada Department of Transportation. So we're very interested in assisting Peter and the particular project. We have opportunities where we can help them move. We can provide some resources that will facilitate this particular move. We're also in need of this area that is being occupied, and we're happy to continue to do so, but we're also experiencing some resource needs, so for storage and an increase of our use of our facility. So anything we can do to assist, I assure you, we will within our capacity. NDOT has a lot of resources and opportunities to assist this particular project.
Thank you, Thor. And we are accredited by the American Alliance of Museums. We're one of 10% of museums. There's less than 1,000 accredited museums in the United States. And the last time we had to go for reaccreditation, which was almost 10 years ago, we were threatened with loss of accreditation because of the conditions of our storage centers and our lack of storage capacity. And what this means to the people of Nevada is twofold. First, in terms of collecting historical assets, we've essentially slowed, if not almost stopped collecting. And we'll be criticized 50 or 100 years from now for the gaps in our collections because we're having to turn things away and be far, far more selective in what we collect, because once we take that object, we have a perpetual obligation to maintain it and to preserve it, and we don't have the space to do that. The second part of that is for the collections that we hold for federal and other state partners. Those projects, if you can't do the archaeological mitigation on those sites, those projects stop, and there's a real threat to economic development in the state of Nevada. So I know I heard the priorities that Ward expressed earlier for funding, and I actually agree with them. And so when I come here and ask now for the 8th time for a warehouse to store stuff, I know it's a tough sell, but I'd ask you to think critically about this project. It's now impacting NDOT, and they're seeking ways, as you've just heard, to partner with us. We need to move on this and keep accreditation and keep the economic wheels rolling in Nevada. On to project number 9. Priority number 9 is back in the Las Vegas Museum to introduce an intrusion alarm system and improve the video surveillance system. Again, as we built this museum during the heights of the recession, we did have to move some systems out of the project that were deemed not critically necessary. But we have no intrusion alarm at this facility, and it houses major collections, textile collections. It holds one of the largest, if not the largest, collection of gaming objects anywhere in the United States. So we're pretty adamant that we need an intrusion alarm system, both on exterior doors and to improve interior security and security of the collection storage areas. And our video surveillance system's got a number of gaps in it. Again, it's an older system that can no longer be maintained. We have exactly 2 security guards trying to observe what's going on in a 78,000 square foot environment. So the ability to have good and contemporary technology is pretty crucial. Next project comes back to the Nevada State Railroad Museum here in Carson City. You may have heard that in January of 2017, there was a major flood event in Carson City, and I don't think any property was more adversely impacted than the Railroad Museum. Storm flows that came off the hills behind and the canyons behind the museum were actually misdirected across our property, caused extensive flooding, washouts. The museum was closed for over 2 months. As working with both FEMA and the state's insurance carrier, we were able to mitigate the immediate damage. Fortunately, no collections were destroyed. Railroad objects being large and typically up off the ground, we didn't suffer any damage to collections, but the public areas became unsafe. It took, as I said, 2 months to get the property in shape to reopen to the public. This project, which you see here, which has external funding of $205,000 available to it, would bolster the property, would look at the exterior of the property, the drainage systems, make improvements to those drainage systems such that we would hope that we would not have another flood event or damage to the property going forward. And the total cost just at this point to mitigate the damage that was done is about $500,000. Some of that was covered by FEMA and the state's risk management.
Mr. Chairman, Ward Patrick. I wanted to maybe go over some housekeeping to enable the board to go back and answer some of these questions. And so I would offer that the book is ordered by department rank, as people probably noticed. So when we go back and if you have questions, we might refer to the ranking of the project. So like I have a question regarding number 4 ranked project, because that'll be kind of, or which page it's on. Those would be kind of the areas that would, I think, help everybody tune in to which project it is, so we can relay back in the book. And then maybe we would take an interim here after we've done the first 10 of 25 projects. Maybe now would be a good time to hear some of the questions. And I would offer, I'd be interested, I'll lead with that if it's okay with you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick. I agree. I was going to jump in and cut it about halfway too, because you start to forget what your questions are if you haven't wrote them down. So at this point, I'll open it up to the board for any questions. If you want to address those now, if there's anything with the number 1 project, we can start there. Mr. Patrick, did you have something else you wanted to say?
Ward Patrick for the record, thank you. Yeah, I would like just to hear a little bit about the funding on these projects. I know there's 3 projects we've already covered that had other funding as part of the project. So I'm sure the board would be interested in knowing, has that funding been secured? And is there a sunset on that? A little bit of information about the funding. Maybe as we go through these 10 projects, I think there's 3 of them with other funding. If we could just hear about if it's secured and the sunset dates and the type of funding. Thank you.
Certainly, for the record, again, Peter Barton, Administrator. Okay. The first project lists $100,000 in private funding. This is truly private funding that does not sunset. It's available now. It's derived from fees for services that are related to our collections management activities. So those funds are secure, available, and there's no sunset on those.
Are there questions with respect to project 1?
I have a question. Can you just talk about the difference between project 1 and project 8? It's pretty clear to me, but I want to make sure the record's clear on the differences between those 2 projects.
Certainly. For the record, again, Peter Barton. Project number 1 is kind of a short, it's a stopgap measure to take care of an immediate need for a small amount of storage so that we can continue to maintain our program in terms of taking in collections from projects that occur across Nevada, mandated and legally required projects. It kind of keeps the flow going in the short term while we continue to address a separate building, a new separate contemporary building with contemporary temperature and humidity controls and an environment, which is that latter project. And I've just been made aware that Brian Hockett, who's the state archaeologist for the Bureau of Land Management, is with us. And Brian, maybe if you could come up and speak as we get up to project number 8 again. Did that address your question? Any questions on project 2? Lost City?
Excuse me 1 second. I wasn't sure if he was jumping in on this particular one or...
Sure, absolutely.
Sure. Hi, I'm Brian Hockett. I'm the lead archaeologist for BLM Nevada. And I guess one thing I could say is that the BLM and the Nevada State Museum, we've been partnering for probably close to 30 years now on collections. And we've had ongoing assistance agreements with the Nevada State Museum. And so the BLM has been contributing funds over those years. I haven't gone back to all the assistance agreements and added it up, but I'm sure it's well over $1 million that the BLM has contributed over the years to the Nevada State Museum for curation, collections, the important functions. Like Peter said, not only are these collections regulatorily required, and they are required prior to the construction of large-scale infrastructure projects in Nevada that typically are on BLM lands as well as private lands, in some cases state lands. So it's not only the preservation and curation of these collections, but also the interpretation of them. So the museum uses these collections in interpretation to enhance public education and outreach in the museum, as well as research. The collections are not just placed in this back building and just collecting dust where nobody looks at them. Researchers are coming in all the time and using and working with these collections. So the BLM plans to continue to partner with the Nevada State Museum and continue to contribute funds to enhance our partnership and the collections.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Patrick, quick question. I believe, Mr. Barton, you said there's a complete set of biddable documents. Have those been vetted, and are those ready to go to permit?
I'm sorry, Chairman, which project are we talking about? Item number?
Number one.
Number one.
Construction documents were completed by Paul Cavan and Associates here in June, just before the end of June.
Based on that information, they would be ready to go to construction and bidding.
Thank you. Are there any other questions on Mr. Han?
Yeah, Adam Hand for the record, and this might be directed towards Patrick, either Ward or Patrick. If this work is required, what sort of funding is generated through the permit process and so forth? Or is there any generated through the permit process and so forth? And I wonder if that might be a source of revenue in the future, if it's not today.
Ward Patrick, for the record, if you could clarify the permit process. At the Public Works Division, we have the building permit process, which probably wouldn't be providing any funding. Thank you.
You said would not be.
Correct.
So when a project is planned, why isn't there some funds set aside for these activities? If it's a requirement, I guess is really my fundamental question as to why we're here today having a conversation about this.
Ward Patrick, for the record, we're looking at a group of projects here that total to pushing up to $2 billion, and we understand the available funding for bond capacity is in the order of magnitude of $100 million to $120 million. And so there will be significant projects that will have needs for funding and will go unfunded. And so one of the priorities of, I believe, the Governor's Office of Finance and the Public Works Division is to work hard to do adequate planning, but yet not overplan. Why plan for things that are not able to be constructed? And so I understand the justification here that this is required, and so there is that $100 to $120 million of bond funding. This is the priority one project for the agency, and so it'll be up to our process to assure that these required projects get part of that $100 million.
Thank you.
Any other questions on project one? Any questions on project two? Project three?
I have a comment on project three.
Director Cates?
I just want to, I don't think it's a surprise to anybody that the Stewart Indian School and turning it into a cultural tourism destination has been a big priority for the governor. He was very supportive of the Stewart Indian School last session, and I know he's very interested in seeing this project go forward.
Thank you. Any questions on project number 4? I do have a question, Mr. Barton. With respect to, it didn't show that there was any funding, outside funding, but you did mention that there was some master planning done by LGA, which would imply that you have invested some monies into this project long-term, correct?
For the record, Peter Barton, that is correct. We received an appropriation of $469,000 through the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs, which was lodging tax revenue, non-general fund revenue, that was used to engage the architect for master planning and schematic design. We have not spent all of those funds because as the construction cost escalated, we couldn't complete the design. We thought schematic design was the right time to pause the project and actually develop tools such as you see here. And there is a fundraising group that has just been commissioned to go through Southern Nevada and seek if there's private investment. It's just premature today to know how that's going to turn out. But we are actively out seeking private investment for the project as well.
Thank you, Mr. Barton. Any other questions? Project number 5. Project 6. I'll put it this way. Are there any other questions on any projects 7 through 10?
I have a comment. I want to give a little plug for cultural affairs as an alum of cultural affairs. I know Peter has been asking for projects for the Indian Hills Curatorial Center for a long time, and I really just want to emphasize, I've been in the facility, I know how crammed it is with things, with artifacts, and I really want to focus on the comments he made about how they are turning away artifacts that are important to the state's history. And we will forever lose the opportunity to have those in the public domain. And I think that's what we're losing every day, that this project doesn't get done. And I just want to put in a personal plug for it.
Thank you, Director Cates. Any other questions before we move on to Project 11?
Mr. Chairman. Ward Patrick for the record. Peter, if you'd address the funding questions on Project 8 and 10 about the availability of funding, if they're secured, and sunset, that would be fantastic.
For the record, Peter Barton. On the Indian Hills Curatorial Center on project number 8, there was private funding used to develop the site master plan and to do the schematic design package. Those funds have been expended. They were just in excess of $100,000. They were private funds, again, that came via the Department of Tourism and Cultural Affairs. Those funds have been spent. There is no external funding been identified in terms of final design and construction at this point in time. And then Project 10, the Nevada State Railroad Museum, Carson City, has available to it funding in the amount of $205,000 that is derived from insurance proceeds. Those funds potentially could sunset. The insurance companies somewhat anxious to close that claim out. We have suggested that we need at least another 18 months to be able to do that for this Public Works and the budget process to go forward. We wouldn't have an answer until likely next June. And the insurance carrier has agreed to that in writing to Division of Risk Management. So that does have a potential sunset by the end of 2019.
So, Mr. Barton, just to clarify, if this is not funded, you will lose that?
That's correct. That's potential loss of those funds, yes.
Thank you.
And if it's your pleasure, I'll move on then to Project 11, and I'll just ask Mr. Patrick, we've actually gone through our 40 minutes, so we're now kind of If you want me to go forward, I certainly will. We're scheduled until 10:40, but I want to be fair to everyone in the room. Your pleasure. I'm happy to go on.
Yes, please, I think,
Okay,
go
sure.
ahead and
We'll
we'll
go
just
quickly.
expedite it a little bit. Thank you.
So Project 11 goes back to Indian Hills Curatorial Center and renovates the existing building. So again, to be clear, this is separate from Project 8, which would be the new structure. The existing building has a few Resner heaters. It has no cooling capacity whatsoever. The temperature fluctuations in there are dramatic in the summertime. This project would do two things. It would do some external insulating of the building to control that environment somewhat, to stabilize the environment, and would put new HVAC in the facility on both sides, historical and the anthropological collections. It's $592,000 per the Public Works estimate. And again, this is to stabilize the environment. It's the facility's critical to us, but right now it's in the summertime it can be pretty warm inside, which is not the best for collections. Recognizing that, we don't put our most fragile collections in this building. We maintain those in the State Museum, where we've carved out space for collections and where we can better control the environment. But again, the American Alliance of Museums 10 years ago came to us and said, we're going to pull your accreditation if you don't fix some of these things, and this is one that they specifically brought to our attention. Project number 12, or priority 12, is out at the East Ely Railroad Depot Museum. This is a 1907 historic structure. It's on the National Register, and it is part of a National Historic Landmark District. Serves as our museum out there. We're looking to replace failing windows throughout the building, and the baseboard electric heating system was put in, close to 30 years ago now, and is very difficult to control and is certainly not very energy efficient. And I know those of you who've been to Ely in the wintertime know what that can be like. I've been out there when it's -10 and had to sit in the museum with my coat on all day just to try to stay warm. So kind of a critical project for us in Ely. One of our other collection storage facilities is the Marjorie Russell Textile Research Center out on Arrowhead Drive here in Carson City. That facility has HVAC system that has really exceeded its serviceable life, and we're quite concerned, and this was a high rank in the facility condition analysis for replacement of the roof-mounted HVAC system there. You're seeing a common theme with HVAC and security systems here at the Nevada State Railroad Museum in Carson City. And this is an aerial view in the photograph. It's a 13-acre site. It has several buildings, a historic railroad depot, water tower, a historic station master's home, a main interpretive center, and then various annex buildings and a railroad restoration shop. Here we have no intrusion system. We have suffered losses here. Unfortunately, some railroad items have high value in the marketplace, and we've got some very precious artifacts in this facility. And one that you'll begin to hear a lot about is next year, May of 2019, marks the 150th anniversary of the completion of the Transcontinental Railroad. The state of Nevada owns the last piece of railroad rolling stock that witnessed that event. We have the last coach. It was a director's car for the Central Pacific Railroad that carried the gold spike to Promontory in 1869. We have that object. It's a fairly fragile wooden object. We've got locomotives that date from 1875 that operate. We've had break-ins where people attempt to steal some of the hardware from those locomotives. So we place a high priority, even though it's tough when we have to rank these projects. It's like, which is your favorite child? And this is, even though it's number 14, it is a pretty high priority for protection of state assets. A similar situation out in Overton, where we lack exterior parking lot lighting, which limits our ability to host evening events, particularly in the winter months. and creates a security concern for us. Moving along rapidly at the Nevada State Museum here in Carson City, we have a project seeking to do some advanced planning. The facility is comprised of the historic U.S. Mint, 2 additions to the Mint, the concourse, and then the North Building. In all of those spaces and all of the exhibit galleries, we have very limited space for public gatherings to host events. Right now, we've got 1 gallery in the Mint building that'll hold 85 persons for events. We do monthly public programs, and they sell out regularly, and we end up having to repeat the programs 2 and 3 times. Not that that's a bad thing, but we desperately need some larger event space, and this would help us do some master planning and schematic design to alleviate that issue. Moving to the Nevada Historical Society in Reno, another HVAC system renovations, another roof-mounted system that has aged beyond its serviceable life, and some of the ductwork is beginning to leak, and we're getting issues of water penetration into the building and onto collections. Nevada State Railroad Museum, Carson City, again, to insulate the walls and replace exterior doors in the annex, which holds a lot of our large equipment collections. These doors are 30 years old. They're manual doors. We rely on volunteers, a lot of volunteers, to help us present our public programs. These doors, we've had a couple of volunteers get injured trying to open and close these doors. So we're seeking to replace those and to do some insulation. Right now, the temperature fluctuations in that building are such that it actually rains inside the building from time to time because of the change in the environment. Going back to Reno and the Nevada Historical Society, we're currently located on the campus of the University of Nevada. It's a 99-year land lease. We've got a 22,000 square foot building. Here again, we've exceeded our capacity to store collections. We have stopped collecting materials that are presented to the Historical Society. We've been working with the University of Nevada for the last year and looking at properties that they wish to dispose of. They have a critical need for space on campus. So they have a need, we have a need. We're trying to partner and fulfill both sides of that equation by looking at possible acquisition of the Warren Nelson building on 2nd Street in Reno. Far better location for the Historical Society, puts us downtown, almost triples the size of the building, which will enable us some growth. This would seek some advanced planning for that project. Moving back to the Nevada State Railroad Museum in Carson City, the railroad ties on that facility were used ties when they were installed in 1980, but they were serviceable. Many of them have now failed. And if you don't keep the ties, the gauge spreads, and occasionally we have a derailment. We'll drop a steam locomotive onto the ground, and it's not a pretty picture trying to get it back up onto the rails. This project would replace the railroad ties, the switch ties, do some grading and some new ballast work, and then what we call align the track to make sure that it's gives the best service for the operating railroad. An HVAC system renovation in the Interpretive Center and the Railroad Restoration Shop here at the Carson City Railroad Museum again. No cooling, very little ventilation, and some failing Resner heater units that are, of course, ceiling suspended units. Also at the Railroad Museum, an electrical upgrade to replace panels that are original to the building's construction. As we put new interpretive exhibits in, there's more technology needs, more electrical load needs, and we're at capacity in these panels. Nevada State Railroad Museum again in Carson City, an advanced planning project. And we've got exhibits on the interior of the building. We've got a 13-acre site, which the director, and I think he may be in the audience, calls the 13 happiest acres in Nevada, is that it? To look to take advantage of the exterior of the facility move the interpretation to the next level to create some immersive environments that look at logging, mining, agriculture, and how products were extracted from the ground, processed, and then delivered to a customer. We can do that on that site. This would provide for some interpretive planning. In Boulder City, we're looking to expand an existing open-sided display pavilion for the most precious equipment. That equipment sits out in that desert sun 24/7, 365 days of the year. This project would extend an existing pavilion regardless of the new construction. This would be a need to house some of the equipment. And then lastly, at the Carson City Railroad Museum, a potential expansion to the existing interpretive center, which when it was built in 1980 was envisioned to be expanded upon at some point in time. We've got restored equipment, including the one-of-a-kind and McKean motor car, which has to be held right now in the annex or the restoration shop, which takes it out of prime public view. This would create new interpretive spaces and classroom spaces for the museum. I end with just to recognize, and I know you'll cover these later, there are statewide programs that we have needs within, both ADA out at Lost City, roof replacements in Las Vegas and Carson City at the State Railroad Museum here in Carson City, and in Las Vegas at the State Museum, and then some fire suppression projects, both at the Stewart Gym and the Carson City Railroad Museum and the East Ely Freight Depot. In Ely in particular, we're not able to use the freight depot for public purposes because it does not have a fire suppression system. There are other issues as well, but we're trying to at least move in the direction where we can use that facility for public purposes. And I believe that's all we got. Oh, we have paving. How could I forget paving? Marcus wouldn't forgive me. We've got some paving needs, both maintenance needs in Boulder City and at the Russell Textile Center, and a possible expanded parking area in Boulder City. And you'll be hearing those projects, as I said, later on. Now I'm done.
Thank you, Mr. Barton. Are there any questions? I just want to say for the record that once again, there are a number of projects here that are deferred maintenance projects, and hopefully one day we'll be able to actually address those within the budget. Ma'am, gentlemen, thank you very much.
Okay, and just, you know, I mentioned earlier about bringing money to the table. Your current administrator also said to me, he said, if you bring money to the table, bring it in small bills. So I did bring small bills. I don't know if this will help.
Okay, moving on to agriculture. Yeah, we're going to take a 10-minute break. Okay, we're going to get started again here. Welcome, Department of Agriculture.
Hi, thank you. I'm Jerry Conrad. I'm the interim director for the Nevada Department of Agriculture. And here at the table with me is Homa Anushrapur. She's our Food and Nutrition Division Administrator. Oops, sorry.
Can I ask one favor? Would you mind sliding those microphones over, or whoever's going to speak so that she can speak into it? Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We also have Deborah Crowley, our fiscal administrator, Mike Geisinger, our facility manager, and Darren Murphy, our warehouse manager, with us in case there's any questions. So here's an overview of our department and some info about our divisions and basic info and our buildings and laboratories and such. NDA's budget is $220 million annually, less than 1% of which is general fund. Our priority number one project we're going to talk about is freezer renovation in the north. And some of you might remember us, we were here 2 years ago regarding the same project. Our second project, priority number 2, is a southern warehouse. And both of these projects have an impact on Nevada's food insecure. Home is going to talk about our northern freezer renovation next. And let's see, you see the number here. Whoops. The number here is the total request estimate based on Public Works.
Okay, we are requesting about We are requesting about over $2 million to remove and replace 2 existing drives in our freezer. The 2 freezers that have been highlighted in the previous slides. And they are about 3,900 square feet and are estimated to be 40 to 45 years old. And the life expectancy of freezer this size is about 20 to 25. So you already see that these existing freezers are 15 to 20 years beyond their useful life expectancies. Many components of the freezer, including the condensers, evaporator coils, and fan motors, are obsolete. And condensation and ice buildup are a hazard, and temperature fluctuations are constant, which may result in collapse of the ceiling or loss of food. As you see, the picture speaks to the problem, and you can see the tile is coming up and the ice is hanging from the ceiling, and we are really concerned about the safety of our employees with this kind of, ice coming down the ceiling. We, at the Department of Agriculture, we oversee 13 out of 15 USDA food programs. So these programs are really crucial and are directly affected by the need for adequate storage. These programs, excuse me, include National School Lunch Program, Commodity Supplemental Food Program, Child and Adult Care Food Program, Summer Food Service Program, Food Distribution Program on Indian Reservations, and Nutrition Service Incentive Programs. These programs are crucial because they are providing access to safe and nutritious food for food-secure Nevada's population, such as children, families, and elderly. When we cannot participate in USDA food program without having adequate storage space. And that means that our children, elderly, and families who are in need of food may go hungry. What are the consequences if not approved? The condition of the current freezer with maintenance and repair downtime is already creating operational hardship on these programs. We receive about $900,000 operating funds from USDA and almost $15 million of food commodities that could be withheld if we don't have adequate storage space. And as you saw in the picture, ice and condensation buildup puts our employees at risk of injuries and because of the slip or fall or falling ice or ceiling tiles. If the freezer stops working, those crucial programs that we talked about are going to be interrupted while we are looking for at least space for freezer. And that means an interruption of the service also for people that we are providing food and they are in need of food. And also we are liable for the food that we are losing as a result of the freezer failure. So as you see, we have 3 significant concerns here: interruption in the service to the needy Nevadan population. We are concerned about the safety of our employees and also the liability for loss of the food, which may have fiscal consequences for us from USDA.
Thank you, Homa. So we'll move on to project number 2, which is our second priority. And again, you can see the Public Works estimate there. There's an overview of our staffing in Las Vegas office, and this request is for our southern headquarters warehouse. This building, our current building, which I'll show an overview of for you in just a moment, was 100% NDA funded. Our contribution was approximately $1 million for the building itself. And that was, I don't know if any of you have been down there, but that's the old Metro building that opened a few years ago with our staff. So this is a layout of the property, and you can see here this extra parking area at the bottom of this image is not really of any use to us as it stands, and so with the growth that we've had in Las Vegas in several of our programs, which we'll talk about in a moment, we thought that parking area could be put to better use with a warehouse. The warehouse will cover a few areas. The main purpose of the warehouse is our cold and dry food storage, which Homo will talk about in just a moment. It will also serve for some growth areas that we're having across all of our divisions down there by serving with office space as well as laboratory space. Here's one more image with a mock-up of what, the kind of space that the building might take up there on the overall layout. Over the last 4 years, all of our divisions that are in our southern office, consumer equitability, food and nutrition, animal, plant, have grown combined by 31%. And we're doing all right now. We have enough office space. We do have one person who serves their office is in a laboratory, which we'd prefer that not to be the case, but we don't have anywhere to put them right now. And so that's part of the planning where we're adding the office space and the laboratory space to the need that we have for the warehouse, and we'll talk more about that specifically. But those same divisions are continuing to grow, and our projection right now will be over the next 5 years of an additional 54% growth that we will need because of the demand and services that are happening in Las Vegas. One of the positions that we will be requesting this session is a veterinarian to cover the southern region. And part of the warehouse request is a lab space that would house a lab for this position and allow services that will help protect the public health in our state's most populated area. Home is going to talk about the need that we have in Southern Nevada for our food and nutrition services, and thus the warehouse.
The same crucial programs that operate out of our northern warehouse also operating out of our southern warehouse, except that we serve more population in the southern part of the states than northern part of the states. As you see, the number of participants as in Las Vegas is over 300,000 people compared to 114,000 in the north. In the north, we have about 9,000 square feet for cold storage and 10,000 square feet for dry food. And we have half of that in Las Vegas, whereas we have a participation 3 times over the northern part of the state. A new warehouse building in Las Vegas would include 3,000 square feet for cold storage. At this point, we are leasing about 2,250 square feet through Las Vegas Cold Storage, and we are paying $68,000 a month. And as the population grows, and we are going to show you the projection, we are in need of more space that is also associated with additional cost. And the dry storage at this point, we have about 5,000 square feet, and it's at its capacity at this point. And again, we are asking for 7,800 because we are expecting growing participation in the southern area. As I said, we are outsourcing the cold storage in Las Vegas, and we are paying $68,000, and we are projecting to a 12.5% increase in participation by year 2022, which again requires additional cold storage, additional cost to our sponsors. The consequences, if not approved also, is because of outsourcing, we have little control over the processes, procedures, and which has led in the past to the loss of food and also non-compliance with our standard operating procedures, which also puts us at the risk with USDA in terms of funding for our programs. And as I mentioned, we are at the capacity in our Las Vegas for dry food storage, and the program is growing. And if we don't really get a dry food storage, this one is going to be outsourced too, and that is another additional cost for us. In conclusion, as we said, our first priority is the freezer in the north, and you saw the two freezers. We are getting in one of them, we are getting about 20,000 pounds a month of frozen food. And you saw the picture in terms of the hazard for our employees. And as I mentioned, and I would like to reiterate that again, that we are in danger of getting caught from the USDA because we may lose the fund for not being able to keep the food, lose the food, and not be able to provide service to our needy population in both southern and northern Nevada. Our request number 2, which is the warehouse for southern office, that is also important because, first of all, our population is growing. We would like not to outsource that because we think it's cost beneficial to have it in-house. And also, again, because we have more control and we have more streamlined processes in our warehouse in terms of delivery and making sure that the food are delivered not only on time, but also the right food is delivered. In the past, we had issues with expired food going to our sponsors, which won't happen in our warehouse because we have a system in place. But in cold storage, we have no control over what they're doing. And as I mentioned, it has caused the loss of food in the past for us.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Thank you, ladies. Any questions? I have, go ahead.
I just have a question about funding, because these are school lunch program, USDA programs that I assume are largely federally funded. And are you seeking any federal funds for these projects as a result of that?
We did seek a project last year, and we were given $90,000. That's all they had, and it's not going to work because there is some structural changes that we have to make, and with $90,000 we couldn't, so we returned the money.
Okay.
Because it was one-time funds.
When you mention sponsor, can you elaborate on what that means, please?
Sure. Our sponsors are school districts that we provide lunch for, also our senior citizen centers, adult care centers, daycare centers, so we all call them sponsors.
And with respect to the USDA,
for food nutrition. Oh, yeah, also, I have to mention that of that $220 million that she's talking about, $100 million is in the Food and Nutrition Division. We have the most money for Department of Agriculture comes from federal, and the only state fund we get matched for it is my salary. That's all. It's just.
ma'am, would you like to say something?
Hello, I'm Deborah Crowley, the fiscal administrator. I just wanted to comment on the, federal contribution. to reiterate, we are a 99% non-general funded budget. And so fiscally speaking, I would say we are contributing every year. And also the federal government is the one that pays 100% of the school lunch programs, except for a less than 120,000 general fund contribution, and that is only to meet the match requirement for the federal programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Thank you very much. Good morning, Chairman, board members. My name is Jack Robb, for the record. I'm Deputy Director of Nevada Department of Wildlife. With me today, I have Liz O'Brien. She's our fiscal deputy, and Rod Lighthouse, who passed out the handouts. He's in charge of our engineering group. Today, we have just a few projects in front of you, but a brief overview of our department. We have 7 unique divisions. We're spaced throughout the state, as most agencies are. We have 262 full-time employees, 133 buildings, 13 radio towers. We have to operate our radio towers separate from everybody else because we are away from well-traveled roads on a regular basis, so we operate our own radio towers. 11 management areas encompassing 120,000 acres. 8 major facilities, 7 unique divisions, 4 fish hatcheries, and we operate our department in 3 unique regions. So that's just a quick overview. We have 10 projects in front of you today. I'm going to highlight 6 of the 10. We're going to start out with a multi-agency building, then we'll go into a couple water projects we need and some heating, air conditioning projects we need to accomplish, and then some office upgrades and some storage facilities we are in need of. The first project is an advanced planning project for a multi-agency facility in Las Vegas. In the audience today is Dominique Jagoin. He's deputy with the Department of Conservation and Natural Resource. This is a joint project. It would be a joint use facility between DCNR and the Nevada Department of Wildlife. We currently occupy 4747 Vegas Drive jointly, but not all of their staff is at 4747 and not all of our staff is at 4747 Vegas Drive. This, as other projects you've heard today, was something that was getting traction in the early 2000s prior to the economy downturn. There was some original engineering done on this project. Over the past few years, we've worked with Department of Conservation and Natural Resource and Public Works Division to review the plans that were developed before, looked at right-sizing it. We worked with TSK. We did a needs assessment, and through that needs assessment process, we found that the plans that were developed in the early 2000s were over our current need. It was a building that exceeded what we anticipate needing going forward.
So just a quick overview of the site, 4747. It is located right in the middle of the park, Decatur and Vegas Drive. We're surrounded on all sides by park. The city of Las Vegas owns the corner. They just haven't developed that corner yet. We're currently in the process of getting another appraisal on that property. Our front buildings are to the point that we have a hard time fitting our staff in, and all the equipment we have in there, electrical needs, everything, we're having increasing difficulty in there. So we're looking to hopefully work with the city of Las Vegas and transition out of this facility in the near future. So that's why we're doing the appraisals. Moving on to the next page, you can see for everything we do there is fairly cramped, and luckily we do sit next to the adjacent park. That's the only way we have ample parking, is our staff does park at the park. The back, you can see there is a shop that is undersized. It was built to match the size of the back of the lot, but we definitely need a bigger facility back there. Our secure parking, it's noted as secure parking, but it is anything but in that neighborhood. We oftentimes have break-ins and vandalism occur. I'll move on to the next page. The main facility that Endel occupies is 5,344 square feet. It houses 26 employees. It's going to house 30 employees. We have another location over in Henderson that is an annex office for boat registration and licensing. That is at an old Kmart shopping center in Henderson. Kmart is shut down, and every other business in that location has moved out. It's deteriorated to a point that we need to move 4 staff members out of there. So our need at this facility is even growing as we speak, due to the fact we're going to move 4 more employees in there. The annex, it's not as old as the others, but it is also grossly undersized for what we're trying to accomplish in that facility. The Parks, NDF, and SHPO office, it's housed 23 employees currently is what we show. It is a newer facility. They're good neighbors, and they have a larger conference room, so part of that 5,974 square feet is a large conference room that we oftentimes share. But it's undersized for both of our needs. DCNR also has multiple people spread throughout the city and other facilities. So we're trying to consolidate, make it more of a one-stop shop for our customers, and be more efficient with our own operations. We find that when we have employees spread throughout the city, we don't have the most efficiency. We also, in scoping out the new building that we're asking the funding for, we have 2 locations out in Boulder City that are warehouses that have small offices that have been converted into even more office, and they are not really a livable condition out in Boulder City either. So we're trying to consolidate everybody throughout the valley and come up with a site that works for both DCNR and NDOW and better serves the citizens of the Las Vegas area. Some of the problems we have at 4747, you can see the picture in the upper right-hand corner. That's some of our law enforcement officers taking a flat screen TV off the roof. That's not our flat screen TV. We don't know where that came from. Somebody from across the street in the apartment complex must have stole it and tried to hide it from somebody, so they just left it on our roof. We have continued vandalism of our HVAC. When you have copper and aluminum and readily available items and nobody in the close proximity at night, they can make as much noise as they want dismantling this equipment, and they do on a regular basis. We've had multiple, on the next page, I'm not going to go into each one, but multiple law enforcement concerns there. We've had rocks thrown through the window during business hours with employees in the lobby. We've had multiple SWAT incidents right across the street, multiple incidents of armed robberies that our law enforcement becomes involved in apprehending or chasing those individuals through our location and through adjacent locations. And with the size of it, we have security issues, we have size issues, we just have multiple issues, and the age of the building. It just, it's a shame to keep dumping money into a building that we're going to get out of at some point, but we still need to maintain that building, so we still put money into it. You can see on the next page some of the office conditions, some of the warehouse conditions. You look at some of these offices, you think, boy, can't you store this stuff someplace else? We don't have any closet space, and a lot of it's critical to their daily functions. They can't even take it home because you don't know what item you may need on that day. So a lot of our offices there look cluttered, but it's really not clutter. It's things that we need on a daily basis to accomplish our task. Our warehouse is grossly undersized, and it acts as multiple things, and it's just not adequate for our needs at this point. One of the concerns going forward when we get into a new place is the amount of parking that we will need, and that's one of the things that we're going to have to consider in the design. We have a lot of individuals that have to drive to work, but then they have a work vehicle because we don't supply take-home vehicles, so we have to have secure parking and ample parking for public when they come in, a big enough space for a boat pull through because we register boats at this location and need to have a whole identification number inspection. So we need a large site and different engineering that goes into most planning processes. As I talked about the previous work on the next page, TSK has done a needs assessment. So this ask that we have right now in front of you to provide some architectural design is after TSK did that needs assessment. The benefits going forward will be consolidation. The Nevada Department of Wildlife had multiple offices in northern Nevada. Up until a couple of years ago, we moved into a joint office, and we found that our operation works so much better, having fiscal, having licensing, having the game, LE, everybody in one location. Our productivity has increased greatly, and we're looking for that same type of opportunity in southern Nevada. Worker safety, increased public parking, secure parking for employees and agency vehicles, more storage, improve employee workspace, and improve public meeting space also. Our next project is a water well for Gallagher Fish Hatchery. This is a standalone fish hatchery. Some of our locations are joint wildlife management areas with fish hatcheries. This is a standalone fish hatchery that actually resides on U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service property out in the Ruby Marshes, if some of you are familiar with that location. The next pages will show you, this is a spring box, and I have a background in, I worked for a water utility for 15 years, and I look at this water situation out there, and it scares me, and it's continued to scare me. This is a spring box. Our domestic supply is fed through a spring box. When you have a spring box situation, it's basically surface water under the Clean Drinking Water Act, so you have to treat it like surface water, not groundwater. You can see in the spring box on the steps going down in the spring box, there's a dead mouse on one of the steps. The picture down on the bottom, that is an actual jaw from an animal. And that's in a spring box that feeds a domestic water supply. We have a water treatment system downstream of our spring box, but we have continued to try to maintain that system. It's been problematic at best over the years, and even in the past few years. We've had to give bottled water to our residents at the fish hatchery. We have multiple residents with families at the fish hatchery. This is a very remote location, so we require staff to stay on site for 24-hour operation of a fish hatchery. They don't have to man it 24 hours, but they have to be available in case we get a low water flow or something occurs on station. We need people there to react. So this is a living situation for multiple families, and we need to really improve that. And it is not just for domestic supply, the spring box, it is a full water system. If the well and the spring box are as old as they are, we need to revamp the whole system up to the houses. So that's one of the water systems we need to get done. The next one is another fish rearing station. It's not a hatchery, it's a rearing station. This one's located out by Baker, Nevada, out right below the Great Basin National Park. The well was constructed in 1955 at 32 feet deep. Currently the well's at 14 feet deep. That really doesn't suffice to keep water quality where you need it to be. We have a leach field in close proximity with that shallow of a well. That is a concern. It's not constructed to code, no backflow, not secure. It's greatly exceeded its useful life, and failure is imminent. And we have one of the people on station has a young child, and we understand there's another one on the way. So it's a concern when you have water quality of this. And this is a well rebuild plus water lines and other infrastructure to increase fire capacity and other items on that site. The next one is construction water wells at the Key Pittman Wildlife Management Area. The reason that these are broke out between wildlife management areas and fish hatcheries is we have different funding sources of match. Our fish hatcheries do have a match component that we could bring, but with the drought and lower levels at Lake Mead, we've seen a decline in our fishing numbers, our license sales, which has led to a decline in our match. And we are struggling with the dollars we have now to maintain our fish hatcheries and maintain the projects we currently have going and the staff levels we currently have with the federal match we have. This next project is on a wildlife management area, which is under Pittman Robinson, which as of late we've done all right, so there may be a different match component for that one. But this is also a site that has residents on it. Young couple live there. The well was constructed in 1949. It was 100 feet deep when it was constructed by the logs that we have found. The well is currently set at 57 feet. There is no backflow, there is no separation for other uses on the site separate from the domestic, which can be a health issue also. So this is another situation that it would be a full rebuild of a water system, not just a well that we need put in there to accommodate fire flows, to accommodate safe livable conditions for our staff that are required to live there. The next one is on the Kirch Wildlife Management Area. A few years back in 2016, we did put in a domestic well. Even though there's a lot of water out there on site, a lot of it is spring water, and to drill a well in that location and get good well water is problematic. So the well that we had put in is not sufficient to serve both domestic supply and the irrigation needs of the property. That becomes problematic when the spring can serve them both, but the well can't. This system, the water system, was not constructed in a manner that they're split for domestic supply and irrigation use. It's either one or the other. So we have an irrigation need there, and we have a domestic need there, and the well we put in doesn't supply that domestic need. So what we're looking to do is separate those systems and have new systems put in, one from our existing well and one from the spring box that served that location for a long time. We could no longer use the spring box as we trying to get away from at the Gallagher location. At this location, had chloroform. We had chlorine issues. We had multiple issues with that site. So we had to go away from that system. That's why we drilled the well, but now we have additional problems with water on that site. The next projects are heating and air conditioning systems for the Gallagher Fish Hatchery. You can see in the slides, these units are 26 years old. They have R22 refrigerant in them that are getting phased out. They're damaged by multiple things, rodents, trees falling, the ducting. We want this, not just new units, but we need to replace the ducting because the ducting has multiple issues with rodents, efficiencies. It would be a total rebuild of that system for the employees out there. The next one is a HVAC construction for Key Pittman at Mason Valley. I would like to meet the gentleman that put together the two 55-gallon drums with a heat exchanger unit because that was fairly ingenuitive, but it really doesn't meet state code. It might be a museum piece when we're done with it. But we have multiple issues out there, and it, again, is R22 refrigerant. The parts to keep these units going are becoming expensive and increasingly unavailable. So we've band-aided these to the point of their useful life, and we're running out of band-aids. The parts are becoming hard to come by. The next one is a HVAC system for the Elko office. This is one of our newer facilities. The building was built in 2002. As in Las Vegas, if your air conditioning goes out, it's never on an 80-degree day, it's on a 120-degree day. 2 winters ago, December, January timeframe, we had a failure of the heating units, or a good portion of the heating unit in the Elko office, when we were having daily highs of less than 10 degrees. And this went on for weeks. Some of the issues we have in Elko is the availability of contractors to be on site to take care of your systems. Those contractors have longstanding customers with the mines, with other commercial buildings, and for us, and when you have those cold snaps, everybody's system is stressed, and those contractors go to the places that they have done historical work with and have ongoing stuff going with them. We tried to get people out of Reno to go up there, but at that same time, it was cold in Elko, it was cold in Reno. So we went multiple weeks with space heaters in there, taxing our electrical system, and probably not really good for if the fire marshal walked through. But we went multiple weeks that we were 45 to 55 degrees in the office during the day. It becomes problematic trying to type and everything. So that's down our list of priorities, but it does have a good number of employees at it that are affected by this problem. And we've band-aided it, but we're running out of band-aids there also. It's something we need to get taken care of. Ramifications of projects not approved. You're going to hear this from everybody, so I'm not going to go through it in detail because there's more need than you guys have money to fulfill the need. But it's public safety, it's office safety. A lot of times it's living conditions and what we've put in front of you, and how we have families living on places we mandate them live at. So with that, I'm not going to go into the other projects. They're on our list, but these are the ones that we have exceeded a want for. It's turned into a need, and we would hope we can get some of these funded and get some of our employees in our locations taken care of. So if you have any questions, the 3 of us are here to answer any of them.
Thank you, sir. Are there any questions? Member Hand?
My question is on the first project on the list. With the idea of consolidating and obviously those other facilities would be empty. Are those state-owned? Would those be sold? And what kind of, I guess, savings would be created by consolidating and no longer having to either pay or maintain for those other facilities?
Jack Robb for the record. The office at 4747 is owned by the state. So that's why we're currently doing the appraisal. The other locations throughout the valley that DCNR has staff and the Department of Wildlife has staff are leased locations. And so we would see a reduction in our leasing costs. We would get the proceeds from the sale of the property that could be applied to you with a idea of what that property is worth that we can apply to that project, the savings that we would gather from being out of those other locations and the annual cost of leasing those. So in the next phase, we'll be bringing those numbers to you.
Thank you.
I've got a question with respect to the previous work done on item number 1, your top priority. The land secure due diligence with Gary Guy Wilson Architects, property feasibility study, and preliminary building planning. How much was that, and where did the funding come for that?
The needs assessment was a joint project between DCNR and the Nevada Department of Wildlife. I believe that was a $50,000 contract paid 50% by DCNR, 50% by the Nevada Department of Wildlife. I've only been at the agency just under 4 years. I couldn't tell you where the project costs from the last design came from. I believe it was through a CIP process. Maybe Patrick can remember.
Patrick Cates for the record. I believe it was presented as a CIP. That was even before my tenure. And that was during the economic downturn, so it just got shelved. But the need's definitely acute and critical, and we were asking for it when I was with Wildlife.
And Jack Robb for the record. And as for the property, it is one of those BLM lots that they've dedicated to state ownership if we prove a need for it. So it is former BLM land. It is currently under control of State Lands Division.
And that land would be leased from the BLM?
No, we would own that land.
Okay. We were looking at that on the map, and so that, I guess my concern would be the location is obviously much better than the location you're in, but much more expensive as well. So is there an idea of what the purchase price of that property would be?
Jack Robb for the record. My understanding is that property comes from BLM to the state of Nevada at zero value. It wouldn't be owned by the Nevada Department of Wildlife or DCNR. It would be owned by state lands. And we would just be on state lands, land with a joint shared building.
Thank you. And then my final question is, having gone through a number of these now, one of the common themes I see is inadequate office space, but I also see a lot of binders and file cabinets. And so I'm just wondering, in the private sector, we've moved away from that, and the documents are scanned and filed from electronically. And so I'm just wondering, at what point from a state perspective are we going to move away from that so that we can free up space, square footage from file cabinets and binders and shelves and that kind of thing?
Jack Robb for the record. We are currently working on programs like that. We are scanning in a lot of documents. There's a cost and time to scan in those documents. And when you have an agency as old as ours, we do have a lot of them down in archives, but there is a lot of paper, and we are trying to consolidate that paper, and that's been an ongoing push of ours to get those documents not only less storage, but more usable. Have them cataloged in a different way that makes them available to more staff and readily available to more staff.
Thank you. Any other questions? Member Tiberti.
Tato Tiberti, for the record. You said something a while back here that fishing licenses were down, and I don't know where. Did you say that? And if so, where and why?
Jack Robb, for the record. For the past decade, we've seen boat registrations and fishing licenses decline. I'm glad to report this year we have just accomplished a license simplification and rolled out a new vendor, and we've turned that tide on declining fishing licenses with a new licensing structure. When senior citizens, juniors, non-residents get a fishing license, they get, well, if they get a hunting license, they automatically get a fishing license. And with new ad campaigns and everything, our fishing licenses are up 39.5% this year in the first 7 months over last year at the same time. Our hunting licenses are up 22%. So we're trying to find ways to make money to afford more things and to do more things for the citizens of the state of Nevada and the sportsmen of the state of Nevada.
Ma'am, gentlemen, thank you. Oh, please.
Rod Lighthouse, for the record. One thing Jack focused on the water projects was mainly the poor quality of the water, but and he did touch on the safety aspect, but on most of those facilities, we don't have adequate fire suppression or any fire suppression at all, so it's also a significant safety hazard, especially out at Gallagher, I'd say, because of the growth around the facilities. And I mean, we have a chance of lightning strike anywhere, but they don't have any firefighting capacity at all there. So that's a huge concern.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, I'm Jim Wright. I'm the director of the Nevada Department of Public Safety. With me today, to my left, is Captain Natasha Koch, who is the chief of our training division within the department. And to my right is Ms. Melissa Carr with the director's staff, and we'll be making presentations on 3 projects. We appreciate your time today to hear these projects. We will get through them as quickly as you can because we realize we're between you and lunch right now. And I have been in the hearings and I've been in your shoes, and I appreciate that. I have to, just a quick chuckle, our friends at tourism today and their little prop. I was thinking with Director Cates today, I typically bring some prop money with me to meetings, but it's usually for IT projects with EATS. So I forgot to bring them today, but that was a cute little token that they had. I appreciated that. Just a quick.
And thank you for clarifying that it was prop money.
Prop money, yeah.
Prop money.
Yeah, prop money. I've had question on mine and my delivery of it too. So a little bit about the Department of Public Safety, multidiscipline public safety from law enforcement, emergency management, fire marshal services, traffic safety across that 8 divisions and 4 offices. About 1,400, 1,500 personnel authorized within the department. And our department, matter of fact, we'll kind of segue into our first project, a headquarters building for the department. Back in 2001, through legislative action, the Department of Public Safety was created, with separating it from the Department of Motor Vehicles. Since that time, as I jokingly say, we have been continuing living over our cousin's garage. there at the DMV headquarters building. It's been causing some confusion. Actually, we have people trying to access our area to renew their license, and take several phone calls for our cousins to do that, because we're housed there in that same facility. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Carr, who will walk us through this headquarters. That's our #1 priority. And I'd just like to say is that, 17 years we've been a department, and it's our vision and our desire. Everybody has the need for funding and stuff, but we would like to eventually in the future have our own home. But we need to keep this project and process going, and we appreciate you hearing that today. So, Melissa?
I'm Melissa Carr for the record. The Department of Public Safety has requested that a new centralized DPS headquarters building be considered in the 2019 capital improvement plan. DPS requests that the advanced planning, including the initial feasibility, programming, and engineering studies be completed in this biennium, and that construction be considered for the following biennium. The majority of the Carson City Department staff would be located at this facility, with the exception of the Division of Emergency Management, Parole and Probation's Offender Facility, the Training Division Academy and Dorms, and the Highway Patrol's Joint Substation with the Carson City Sheriff's Office. Currently, public safety is spread out in 11 locations throughout Carson City. We propose one facility located at the old Nevada National Guard Armory, which is a 13-acre property off of South Carson Street. As you can see, the red stars represents the department's current locations. The yellow star is the centralized area that we would like to use to unite public safety. Here are some of the properties that we are currently occupying. For the divisions needing to centralize, the department is currently legislatively approved for $1,065,534 in non-B&G rent and $731,201 in state-owned facility rent, for a total of $1.8 million for FY19. This is an increase of about $300,000 from rent in FY17 when we proposed this last biennium. These increases are expected to continue with as the economy grows. The total space currently occupied by the department in the state for Carson City alone is 131,138 square feet. Over the next 10 years, DPS is expected to pay roughly $20 million in rent alone. If DPS was to obtain a new building at the B&G rate of $1.04 per square foot, the department could save roughly $600,000 per biennium on rent. We anticipate that the non-B&G rent will continue to increase at a rate of 3% per year in this current economy. This example shows a 10-year progression. This is $20 million that we could in 10 years that we could have invested in Nevada-owned assets. Not only is the building a wise investment for Nevada, it is also an excellent benefit to other departments in the state. If DPS were to obtain its own facility, it would free up 70,000 square feet for other state agencies to move out of non-B&G rent occupied spaces, which would reduce their rental budget and allow for savings to be spent in a more efficient manner across several divisions. So why build a DPS headquarters? There are a number of excellent reasons. The first of which is the scattering of divisions throughout Carson City creates significant logistical difficulties. As a centralized law enforcement agency, the department works closely together, and effective communication requires division chiefs and various staff to be located at headquarters on a daily basis. The second reason is currently DPS does not have available space for any new staff to be added. Our facilities are at capacity and the divisions are already requiring more space. With the addition of one new division last legislative session and new added programs within our department, it has become necessary to secure more space for additional employees in leased non-state-owned facilities. The third reason, because the nature of the services provided to the public and the current public safety climate, it has become necessary to have a higher level of security installed in all the DPS facilities. The DPS Director's Office and Highway Patrol Headquarters co-location within the DMV makes it virtually impossible to provide an adequate level of security. Locating all of the DPS Carson City offices within one building would make it feasible to maintain a level of security necessary for all divisions and would eliminate the need and expense of maintaining separate security systems in multiple facilities. The fourth reason is there are significant cost savings that can be attributed to a centralized building. The department can reduce replication of work, reduce administrative staff such as multiple receptionists, share operational equipment and supplies, reduce interdepartment mail service costs, reduce the cost of having many training and meeting rooms, and the list goes on and on. As well as operational costs, the department is currently occupying space in many older, non-energy efficient buildings, which increases utility costs to each division. A new building would be much more energy efficient and could have greener options such as solar technology. The fifth reason is DMV's long-term space requirements continue to expand. I have attached a letter from the Director DMV outlining their space needs. The department has requested a CIP application for the headquarters facility for the last 6 bienniums. Due to limited funding, the requests have not been approved. Since these requests were made, DMV's long-term space requests have continued to grow, and they have been forced to seek non-state-owned building options for their modernization project. The sixth reason is the isolation of all DPS offices continues to inhibit the operational effectiveness of the department. The increasing demand for public safety services only increases the department's need for a consolidated headquarters facility. If this project is not approved, the following issues must be addressed in the very near future. A plan to solve the lack of available space for both DPS and DMV, ineffective and cumbersome security systems, and the challenge of DPS being a centralized agency with a decentralized location. In addition to these issues, costs of Carson City for non-BNG facilities are continue to increase in future budgets. And I missed this, hold on just a second. This is the location that we're proposing at 2525 South Carson Street. We currently own the property. Let's see, it allows for easy access for the freeway and in between Reno, Tahoe, Minden, and Gardnerville. The department feels this location would be the best fit, and as I stated, it is currently owned by the state and therefore the most cost-effective. Currently, the department occupies 131,138 square feet of state-owned and non-state-owned space, including storage, and the department proposes a 155,000 square foot facility that would also have storage space to house, and it would be to house 325 employees. This number is expected to increase over the next 10 years to 407 full-time employees. And this location would house the following divisions: the Director's Office, Records Communication and Compliance, Office of Professional Responsibility, Office of Traffic Safety, Criminal Justice Assistance, Emergency Response Commission, the Fire Marshal's Office, Investigation Division, Parole and Probation, Highway Patrol Headquarters and Substation, and the Highway Safety Grants, as well as our newest division, the Office of Cyber Defense Coordination. So this is an estimate of our potential growth of full-time staff over the next 10 years. The department is open to any lease purchase options available to us. The initial planning and specs are critical to determine the best manner for the department to proceed. In conclusion, the department feels that it is in the best interest of the state to have a centralized location to conduct all public safety matters. The investment is truly a justifiable endeavor on behalf of the citizens of the state. We greatly appreciate your consideration to this project, and I thank you for your time. I'm going to pass it off to Natasha Koch, Captain, in order to talk about our academy and dorms.
Good morning, Natasha Koch for the record. I'm the chief of the Department of Public Safety Training Division. I'm going to give you a little brief on what the training division is. The training division is for the basic academy for all of our peace officers within the department. So if they're Highway Patrol, PMP, State Fire Marshal, Investigative Division, if they are sworn, they have come through one of our locations, either north or south, for their basic academy. We also train all of our existing officers in their continued education to continually increase our professionalism as law enforcement officers. We are currently located at 2101 Snyder, and the building that is there was donated in 1984 by Claude Howard, and we have been in that building ever since. When DMV PS separated to PS, Public Safety took ownership of that building. It is one of the only state or only agency-owned buildings, so we have to do all of the maintenance and everything on the building ourselves. So we have, for example, we have a lot of handy corporals that work there, and just recently put up all of our new blinds for us because we do not have that support to be able to bring someone in. We have to bring in our own contractors or anything to do the maintenance on the building. In 2011, a facility maintenance or a facility condition analysis was done on the building, and basically what I'm going to be going over is some of the things that we have been unable to take care of, and of course that was 7 years ago, so more things have been getting Band-Aids put on it. So the first thing is the tree removal. We have a very large tree on the south side of the building that is, it's really hard to tell, but there's arrows there that are showing the roots that are growing to the building. We're unsure if it's under the building at this point. The window replacements, all of our windows would need to be replaced. That is not dirt, and they have been tried to clean those. That is actually inside. The seals have actually gone away, and the water is actually leaking in the two middles of the windows. So we can't clean that off. Then the frames, most of the frames are rusted, like the appearance. Go to the next one. There you go. That's some of the worst ones. Most of them are in that condition. The roof was replaced in the year 2000. We have had some major roof leaks since then. We do have a flat roof on this building, which everybody that I have come out to say, look at the building, they're like, you shouldn't have a flat roof on this building, and we understand that, but this is what we have. So this is some of the conditions of the ceilings. These are a lot of new leaks. These are not, the square one is an older leak, but most of those are new. This is actually on the wall on the south side of our building in 4 different rooms. This is where the water is actually coming in from the envelope of the roof into the cinder blocks and leaching through, and it's bubbling all of the paint on the walls. We, as recently as March of this year, we had 2 leaks in 2 of our rooms that the water was running down the walls, visibly seen, and the carpet was just wet right underneath it. The HVAC units, most of them were replaced in 2009. Every time we have someone come up there, they tell us we need our HVAC units replaced and either removed and reset onto the roof because they're causing issues themselves. This is some of the concrete issues we have around. These are just an example of what's around the building, the concrete that's cracking, and some of it has been replaced that were actual trip hazards. They have been replaced. The interior paint, I went to the academy in 1998, and I do not think it's been repainted since then. So it has not been painted since the condition analysis was done in 2011. The exterior of the building has been sealed since this, but then they always say that you should have the building sealed every 5 to 6 years to preserve the building. As we are a law enforcement agency and we house cadets, the cadets do not take their firearms home at night. So we secure their firearms in our facility. So at any given time, we have approximately 50 weapons in our facility. And if you're familiar with the area where we are located by the minimum security prison, which on occasion has walkaways. And our building, the vault, the armory that we have in our building is controlled by Secure, so we do have that. We recently just were able to get cameras so we could see if anybody walked in the building. But the door of the armory is actually an interior door. So if someone gets into our facility, kicks through the door, they have access to approximately 50 weapons. So that is a huge consideration for us, is not only to secure the facility, to secure those weapons that are within that facility. So the next one I will be talking about is Project 3. Oh, thank you, sir. We also had our building tested as soon as, I've only been at the training division for a year. And when I came over, there was a lot of complaints about mold, smell in the building. We did have it tested. It did test positive for mold in several locations. 2 of the locations actually were unable to be occupied. We had to seal the rooms off until we got the ventilation, the ductwork changed out in those rooms. We recently just opened them. The classroom 3 and the cadet break room were sealed off. We could not use those rooms at all for about 6 months. They just recently got put back up. The other areas of the building have tested positive, but at acceptable level, and my office is the most, so. Okay. Next project. Okay, the next project is the dormitory facility for the training academy. The current location is the Stewart facility. We are asking for the planning and to include the initial feasibility, programming, and engineering studies to be completed in this biennium for construction, possibly in the next biennium. We are at building 13 of the B&G, the Stewart facility currently. We recently were able to finally put in new carpet. Again, I went through a 98 and I think it was the same carpet. And we were just able to build a kitchen in that facility because the cadets that were previously there did not have kitchen facilities. They were running off hot plates and microwaves. There's no internet. So we have gone, our academy has gone completely paperless when it comes to training our cadets. And so everything they do are on netbooks that they are issued or their personal laptops. So when they go back to the dorms, they do not have any connectivity at all, unless they hotspot their phones or if they go to a different facility to be able to grab Wi-Fi. So they go to McDonald's or Starbucks to do their homework. There's no air conditioning, and it gets warm in those buildings. And we have academies going through the month. We have an academy currently in session right now. So they are running through the hot months. The proposed site is actually where the academy facility is, the academy building is right now, which is at the 2101 Snyder. We have a 5-acre parcel there that when the building was donated, it was transferred from the Department of Corrections over to Public Safety. So we do have 5 current acres right there that we could use to put the dormitory facility on. Having the dorms right near the academy is a huge benefit because the cadets receive physical training correction if they do things incorrectly, so they'll be out on the grass doing push-ups, sit-ups, so it's easy for them to run back, get changed, come back over, get to the grass, then move back over and get changed back out to be back into the classroom. Also, we have a lot of cadets that come from different areas who have never driven in the snow, and when it snows here, it's interesting to hear the stories of them getting to the academy building in the morning from where they need to drive to get there, and having the facility right there would be just a huge benefit. If we don't get the dorms, the biggest consideration we have is, we know that the Stewart facility is moving to try to get a lot of the buildings vacated so that they can take over. And if we do not have dorms, we would not have any anywhere to house any of the rural area troopers or parole and probation officers. They use those dorms a lot. We also use those dorms for if we have instructors that come up from other areas to teach at the academy, they stay in the current dorm facilities. We also, if Highway Patrol or Parole and Probation or State Fire Marshal or Investigative Division has a huge training going on and they do not have the funding to put up for per diem or lodging, they stay at the facility because we do not charge them to stay there. So.
That concludes our presentation on our 3 projects. We're open for any questions you may have.
Go ahead.
On your headquarters building, it shows the funding as, it shows some agency funding. I understand that's highway fund. And I see you have a letter of endorsement from the Director of Motor Vehicles. Do you have any similar endorsement or support from Department of Transportation for the highway fund portion of this?
No, we do not.
Similar to that, that was a question that I had. Are those funds are noted, have we confirmed that those are available? Or is that a speculation?
No, what they're indicating is that's what we're paying now, is the funding we have now for the space that we have.
I think maybe I'm not clear on the question. So the funding summary for the advanced planning says that $754,000 will be provided by the state and $371,000 will be provided by agency. And we understand that agency is the Department of Transportation or the Highway Fund. And so I guess our question is has that funding been established and identified already?
You know, I'm going to ask my ASO to come up and help us with that question.
Thank you. Sherry Brigham for the record. We have not previously secured any funding up front with this project being on hold for many, many bienniums. I think that should there be a go-ahead or approval, then we would be looking at a budget enhancement request, a one-shot for that highway fund.
Thank you.
If I could just add on to that, the reason I asked the question is I recall when DMV came forward last session for their headquarters buildings, they had the director of NDOT come to the table and say that he was in support of the project and that they had sufficient funds in the highway fund. That's what prompted my question.
And with that, I can follow on. We have a good relationship with our highway fund partners, and I'm sure we could secure an endorsement from them. I understand what you're asking now.
And then real quick, the other question I had was for the captain. With respect to the security at your current facility, I guess the question I would have is, steel doors are not very expensive. And what would it take to get that done immediately?
We actually have that in a deferred maintenance. We have quotes on that for $3,500.
Thank you.
For the record, Jim Wright. The exterior doors to the facility are steel doors, so we do have that level of security of trying to get in. But if somebody did come through a window or something like that, then that interior. But we have recognized that as a security need internally, and we have talked about and trying to acquire bids to do that. So we are cognizant of that with an alarm system. You know, we've done everything we can. It's at the lower end of town. Response times down there for alarm calls can be a little delayed just due to the distance, but we are cognizant of that and trying to rectify that security issue.
Thank you. Any other questions? Appreciate your time. Thank you. Oh, sorry, Director Case.
Sorry, I just wanted to make one comment, and you made reference to this in your presentation in terms of the dorms. I want to commend Department of Public Safety for bringing that forward. Because the Stewart Indian School does have the master plan to basically turn it into cultural tourism destination. And I think some of the training activities that are going on out there currently aren't going to be compatible with that long-term vision. So, thank you.
For the record, Jim Wright. Also, we also have there on the facility 3 other divisions in Building 107. Our State Fire Marshal is housed there, Investigation Division, and our Office of Traffic Safety. So again, it's kind of looking at that master plan where that comes along is that, you know, we're going to have incompatible activities there. So that's one of the things too, that centralize our headquarters, we could also relocate those offices and divisions out of there.
Okay, thank you very much. I think at this time, it's 11:55. We will adjourn for lunch, and why don't we try to start back up at, say, 10 after 1. It's a little late. We're running a little late, but we'll try to maybe make it a little earlier than that. Thank you.